Look, Dad, look what they did. Curtains. And rugs. Girl stuff. They totaled the place.
Well, I think it looks lovely.
Honey, it may be lovely for girls, but not for a boys' clubhouse, it isn't.
Correction. Boys and girls clubhouse.
Correction. Boys' clubhouse.
The popular connotation with passport bros or expats, or whatever you want to call them, is that guys are going overseas because they want to find someone to date or find someone to marry, start a family, maybe even get away from some of the culture that we're seeing in modern hip-hop music, or even guys that are looking for peace. But there's an added component that people overlook, and it's interesting that Susan Vinker actually mentioned it in her video today.
Number 2, we stop demonizing men. This is probably the biggest. Maybe it should have been number 1. Just stop. If you have an issue with a particular man, whether it's a father or a husband or a coworker or boss, keep it about that individual. You don't need to make a social statement about men as a whole every time something happens. And that's what we've been doing for the past 50 years.
The first time I had ever heard of Jonathan Majors was when people were saying he looked like a slave when he did the cover of Ebony magazine. From here, he made his appearance in Creed 3, one that created quite a stir as not only was the film successful, but he proved himself an A-list actor opposite Michael B. Jordan. But just as Susan Vinker explained, one minor accusation and instantly he was vilified as a man who had never had a criminal past to speak of. This is something that men, and particularly black men, tire of. Always being the villain.
There are good men and there are bad men. There are good women and there are bad women. So focus on your experiences personally and address the individual rather than making it about something society-wide. That's really where the demonizing men came into play. It's just we stopped looking at people individually and started making blanket statements about men as a group.
She goes on to explain in a very soft way that people should be more understanding of the positives of the male existence and why men being masculine is a good thing for society. But what happens in the society where, as a boy, not only do you see men vilified, but you start seeing all of your heroes disappear? Or should I say, you start seeing them get replaced and the rules start changing. And then you start questioning, where exactly do I fit in? This is a scenario that was covered by a show that we all know, The Brady Bunch.
To the successful launch of Project Brady Bunch. 6 happy kids, 2 lucky parents, and an interested bystander.
Hear, hear.
The Brady Bunch is the story of a man with his 3 sons remarrying a woman with her 3 daughters and finding a way to make their mixed family work with their maid. In this particular episode, the boys are bringing in boxes to help the young girls, and the girls are kind of not really appreciatory of their work, and when they try and look inside the boxes, the girls kind of rebut their offers, and the boys leave exasperated and retreat to their personal space, their clubhouse. The kids begin arguing about what kids argue about in large families, space. In one case, it's an argument about the bathroom being cluttered with cosmetics and girls' stuff. In another, the girls want their own private place just like the boys have the clubhouse, so they borrow the keep out sign from the clubhouse. In another case, it's the girls borrowing guys' clothing and wearing it as their own as they play without permission. And as can be expected, chaos erupts.
Effective immediately, we share. And share alike. Everything. Bathrooms, tom-toms, whatever. Got it?
After a bit of cajoling, the children, and more specifically the boys, are told to share, and then an all too familiar thing happened.
Look, Dad, look what they did. Curtains. And rugs. Girl stuff. They totaled the place.
Well, I think it looks lovely.
Honey, it may be lovely for girls, but not for a boys' clubhouse, it isn't.
The Brady Bunch premiered in 1969, this episode being one of its first. In it, it confronted a subject that we still see today happen to young boys in their spaces. We saw this in Star Wars when a character as central as Obi-Wan Kenobi went from a Grand Jedi Knight to second fiddle in his own show to young Leia. Star Wars told generations of boys and men who identified with Star Wars that now it belonged to women, that now the Force was female. It even gloated that men who lamented the new direction of Star Wars were the problem for complaining about their space being changed from one for men to one for women. Although it's no race to be sure, and both are serious issues to contend with, the notable lack of focus on men's cancer issues in a primarily men's league while embracing a central focus on women's cancer issues also is one not lost on young boys. It is very notable of the NFL to bring notice to women's cancer issues. But if you're a young boy and watching a sea of pink on a weekly basis, a boy can simply ask, where are the blue ribbons for the men that get cancer? We have seen Marvel do a complete revamp of their central characters, essentially turning all of their main male characters into female characters with essentially the same plot. Marvel Comics, traditionally a space for young boys, did the same with Black Panther. The wildly successful Black Panther himself was not recast, but instead made female, and essentially wrote main black male heroes out of the plot of the sequel. This all leaves a young boy who might idolize the Black Panther to simply ask himself, where's my place? Where are my heroes? Where do I belong? The episode continued first with a demonstration in front of the boys' clubhouse as the girls demanded an equal clubhouse to the boys, then the girls deciding to build their own clubhouse and having issues with it, so the boys come and help them build the clubhouse, and in the process of building the clubhouse, they take parts from their own clubhouse, or in this case nails, and their clubhouse falls apart. And in the end, this happens.
It is with great pride that I now declare this new girls' clubhouse officially dedicated.
It's all right. We can use this clubhouse.
Good idea. Yeah. Wait a minute. This one's ours. Yeah, the girls' clubhouse.
But we're supposed to share things.
Yeah.
What's interesting about this episode is that I had never seen a full episode of Brady Bunch before I watched this one. And the only reason I found this one is because someone in the comments underneath Susan Venker's video mentioned this particular episode because the theme correlates to what she's speaking about in her video. And they say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. An episode of Brady Bunch 55 years ago mirrors what we're seeing in Marvel Comics. All of the main characters that young boys and even older and middle-aged men grew up reading and watching and playing with are being replaced by women, and those men are being told, if you don't like these new characters, that means that you are an inherently evil person and you should change your way of looking at the world. And you're seeing this guy's space kind of get taken over with a different agenda. Same for Star Wars, which is more personal to me. When I go to see The Last Jedi and I see the only redeemable character in the video are the strong central female characters, of whom have had very little, if anything at all, to do with the 6 previous Star Wars movies before this one, and you're being told that if you don't like this movie, then there's something wrong with you as a toxic Star Wars fan. Well, I would just say that I'm glad that I'm a grown man, because if I were a little boy and I were trying to navigate this by watching these movies that I enjoyed and I identified with, and then all of a sudden, all of my favorite characters are getting replaced by people that don't look like me. They're all girls. How do you interpret that without feeling bad about yourself? Imagine if we woke up and Thundercats went from all guys with exception of Chitara to basically they're all females now. And you're going to play with the same toys as if nothing changed, and you should feel the same way. And if you feel differently, then that means that you as a boy is inherently flawed. What if we woke up and instead of having He-Man and She-Ra, they axed He-Man and just had She-Ra by herself, and she was the new He-Man and you had to like it? Because that's what's happening to a whole generation of young boys. These are your new heroes now. And if you don't like your new heroes, then get over it, because that means that as a boy, there's something wrong with you. And for a lot of young boys, it's gotta be tough for them, But for older guys watching young boys go through that, it's heartbreaking. They can't see themselves in the media around them, and they're seeing spaces that used to be for guys getting taken over, and there's really nothing guys can do about it. So that other part of Passport Bros is just guys having their own spaces. Soccer spaces, sports spaces, spaces to drink beers and smoke cigars and whatever those spaces are. There are still places on the planet that have guys' spaces exclusively. Not to say that it's wrong or bad to exclude women from certain places, but some places guys just can't be themselves if they're being controlled or monitored or even being forced to acquiesce to women. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, comment below, and I'll catch you in the next video. Take care, guys.